So what are they seeing?
You.
They're seeing us?
Yeah. Recording, no?
You're recording now?
Hello, good afternoon.
Hello, yes?
Hi, I'm Stefan from WJC.
Right.
What seems to be the problem? Because I'm not really clear on
Let
the
me
issue.
explain.
Okay, Dr. Taylor Mars is going to come and explain.
Good afternoon. All the sessions for... Can you ask the students not to talk at this time, please, because I'm getting a feedback. Can you turn off from that side? Thanks. All the sessions for the SBUS classes have to be recorded. We started recording manually because we were having some issues with the Polycom. The Polycom can now record, and I'm being told, I just realized that the recordings were not being done. I'm here monitoring. But all of them have to be recorded. What we're going to do is to revert to the manual recording for this class, and we'll add it to the RVLE system. But as of today, the lab techs will know that they have to request for recording to happen through the Polycom. You could do it from your side, but forget about that. We're going to use the bridge to record, so we don't need your help anymore. We're going to use a regular camera for today, so we'll just continue the class without the Polycom recording. You can turn on back so I can hear your response.
Okay, so I understand what you're saying, but in terms of the students who are here now, they are fine as in the class will go on?
Yes, they can go on because we're going to record from a manual camera. We're doing it from within this room.
No, I'm not talking about the recording now. I'm asking if the students are going to be a part of the class now.
Yes, they will be.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes, they will be. Okay. So you can go on.
All right. Okay. So we can continue. So I see Regina. Regina is in yellow. And where is Dario? And then, are you there, Dario? Okay, good. So we'll continue. So what are they seeing now? Are they seeing class? Okay. So what we're going to do is we're looking at the characteristics between and comparing and contrasting BIX and CAL. Alright, so we're going to move on because are there any questions about the difference? You kind of get a general idea?
Yes.
Dario, Regina?
I'm clear. Regina is clear.
Okay, great. So that is important because that's one of the major themes. And when you think of yourself as an English language teacher, you're going to be thinking, I want to get my students to be able to have the oral language skills as well as the written language skills. I want to bring them to a CAL level. And that is the problem. So when you hear all of this talk about, literacy and so on, grade for literacy test, part of it is that our students are not able to think creatively, to do this summarizing, compare and contrast. That means that they can speak English, at a communicative, everyday, general sense. But when it comes to writing an essay, that 5-paragraph essay, they run into difficulties because they can't manage the academic language, right? So that's a major theme. The second major theme, and this is one of 3, right? So the second major theme is that there's this intersection between language, identity, and power. Right, very important. And there are 3 points under this, and I'll elaborate further. One is that there's disagreement among linguists as to whether a particular linguistic system is a dialect or a language. And that's the 2 key terms, dialect and language. right? And an example that they give in the Paraguayan Boy, which is where I'm getting this information from, is that in the instance of Spanish and Portuguese, those are mutually intelligible, meaning that somebody who speaks Spanish can understand to a large extent somebody who speaks Portuguese, and vice versa. And therefore, because of that, they're similar enough to be treated as a dialect. However, because of the political status of both countries, and especially when you think of the historical political status, right? I mean, when we think of the Caribbean, what do we think of Spain? I mean, what's the connection with Spain? Yeah, Columbus, 1492, So when we think about a language, it's not simply just a linguistic variety and you just look at the structure. Oh, they have structures and people can understand them. There's also the idea of politics and power, right? So even though Spanish and Portuguese can be considered linguistically as dialects of a similar language, they are considered as languages, right? Now, coming closer home to English, there are many varieties of English in the world. And guess what? Some are more prestigious than others, right? Have you heard of RP? Received pronunciation. How many of you have ever listened to BBC? Or you listen to BBC? Yes, you should be of that age, Robin. I'm giving away age.
Yeah, but it's also called preferred English.
Preferred English, right? So, Dario and Regina, have you heard of received pronunciation? Dario? I'm not hearing Regina so well. Okay, I'm hearing you but very kind of muffled. I was just basically asking if you've heard of the term received pronunciation, and then I asked, have you ever listened to BBC, that's British Broadcasting Corporation? Because 10, 15 years ago when I used to listen to the BBC, my parents had it on all the time, there was a particular British accent. No, if you look at BBC World or you listen to the radio, I don't know if you've noticed that there are different kind of accents of the same English, depending on perhaps where the person originally their family has come from, or which part of England they grew up in. You have the Cockney accent that sometimes I can barely understand, right? But it's English. So there are many varieties, and some have more prestige than others. So the next, can they see from current slide? Now, Catchrow talks about, this particular researcher talks about the model of English varieties. And there are 3 circles, right? This is not in any of, this is Paraguayan Boyle. The book that is available for those who are interested, but it's 4 or 5, right? Now, the Regina and Daria, are you seeing the PowerPoint?
It has to be projected.
Oh, okay.
Projected.
Tanika, can you put it on the PowerPoint? Because I want everybody to see the 3 concentric circles. So basically, English has become and is one of the most powerful languages, right? I mean, you have I think it's Mandarin Chinese, you know, in terms of the numbers, right? Because I mean, it's a large population, right? But English has spread its tentacles very far and wide.
But English would be more powerful than Chinese.
Yes, in a sense, right, politically, but not necessarily numerically, right? So what Keshu did was to say, guess what? In terms of the English varieties, here is my model of it. In the center is the inner circle, and that basically comprises of countries where there are native speakers of English. So you're talking about countries like what? Which countries?
Native speakers, like
England. Think about your North
North
American,
American.
right? So America and so on. Those would be the inner circle of English speakers, right? And Canada, parts of Canada, English-speaking parts of Canada. And Australia, where the primary national language is English. Then you have the outer circle, and those are countries where there is in existence an indigenous language. And so there's the official language or national language, English, and then alongside are all these indigenous languages. What are some examples you can think of countries that would fit into that category of the outer circle?
Yeah, I guess Ghana, Bush,
I think about, no, but think about regions. Think about, when you think about outer circles, you have the local language, but English is the language that a number of them speak, but there's this mother tongue, there's this
But that would be
indigenous.
applicable here.
Exactly. So Jamaica belongs in the outer circle. When you think about the outer circle, think about a lot of the countries, the nations that were colonized by, for example, Britain. So you'd put India in the outer circle, many countries on the continent of Africa in that outer circle. Right? And that's just a few. Now, the expanding circle now is where English is taught as a second language for international communication purposes. Right? It has no role in their everyday language, but for international purposes, English is taught. So which countries can you think of would be in that expanding circle?
China.
Yes, China, Russia, Japan. So anywhere where they want to, where they're speaking their own language, they have their national language, right? Japanese. But many of the schools, and in particular, and in India, well, sorry, this is the wrong country, but in Japan, quite a number of the countries, quite a number of the schools, there are institutions where you learn English.
Right.
Because people have the desire to study abroad or to work abroad on business, so they need to know English. Right? So that's one way of understanding the varieties of English that you have. Now, a basic question. The person who comes from a country within the inner circle, would their English be more prestigious, you think, than somebody who speaks English from a country in the outer circle? Why? Right, inner versus outer. You have to speak up so Daria and Regina can hear.
I don't know, because if you're from, for example, Canada, and you speak English, we tend to think that, you know, those persons speak the proper English versus like persons who are just learning the language for the first time. So those persons in the inner circle, they would know a lot about the structure of the language and so on.
Okay. Let me give you a specific, concrete example. I don't know if any of you in high school were taught by somebody like you have an Indian math teacher from, and they're speaking English, you know. And did you have any complaints that you couldn't understand?
Yes.
Right. And you said they can't speak, and don't a lot of you said they can't speak it well, the accents are heavy. Or like a Nigerian would come and be speaking in English. They say, I can't understand them.
Yes.
But yet somebody from Britain comes and we say, yeah man, they speak nicely. Right, so there's
We focus a lot on the accent.
we focus a lot on the accent. And sometimes the Nigerian or the Indian professor is teaching competently, and it just takes a little patience on our hearing to kind of get it. And once we get into it, it's fine. But there is this kind of power kind of between the languages, amongst languages, that we have to take into consideration, and it's very evident in the Jamaican situation where you have the standard English that you're trying to teach, and you have a lot of students, many students coming in and speaking their mother tongue, which is Creole, Jamaican Creole. So you have all of that language and identity, and one of the things that we're trying to, part of this, the theme of language identity and power is that as English language teachers, you are helping your students to add English without belittling their own mother tongue, right? And by adding English, you're also adding a different identity. It's a different identity. And we're going to discuss some of that. So that's one of the major themes. All right, so we spoke a lot about standard language and dialect. And a standard language, when a dialect comes into power as a standard, its status is reinforced by its widespread use in 3 areas. I think about English in Jamaica. When we think about the media or TV presenters, they speak which language? Have you ever heard Doreen Samuel say the mention of that DJ Popcorn? It's very, very funny. Because she was speaking this very polished English, and then she said Popcorn. Right. Then even on the radio and even in the newspaper and in academic settings. Right? If I decide to come and speak to you all in Creole, you might be, what is this? Right? Dialect. Now, the dictionary meaning of dialect really is regional and social variations within a particular language. And when you think about it, persons say that even the Creole from St. Elizabeth is different from Creole spoken in maybe Clarendon.
Yes.
Right. So that's the dialect. But when you think about dialect in terms of the connotation, what people keep onto it, a lot of negative stereotypes are there. Because we would never think of calling French a dialect.
Right.
Oh, the French, no, we call it a language, right? And we reserve dialect for a lot of the indigenous languages, like Creole. So when we're thinking, so these are some issues that we have to be contemplating and forms a major theme. Right? Now, the second reading activity, and Regina and Dario has the reading, so the next one is going to be the page, is just a page long, personal identity and ways of speaking, the case of Yewande. And that's very similar to the experiences we have here. And I have 3 questions up. So as you read it, think about these 3 questions and discuss it, and then we'll share. The 3 questions are one of the basic things. I always start from the basic and then move on. Who is the main character of this excerpt? How does he describe the relationship between language and identity? And then, to what extent do you agree that Jamaican Creole is a rich and expressive communicative resource, a fully formed language? And do you think that for Jamaican Creole speakers acquiring standard Jamaican English, that's a little funny, It's an expansion of that person's identity. So when a JC speaker learns English, we're talking about English at the calc level, do you think they take on a new identity? All right, so in pairs. Okay, so take again another 20 minutes and then we'll share. Are you okay, Dario and Regina? Dario? I need to get a response. Sorry, I'm not hearing you very well.
We're looking at the reading now.
Okay, and you see the questions up on the PowerPoint, right?
I can see them.
Great. Okay, so take 20 minutes to read and discuss and then we share.
How many minutes?
Like 15 to 20. And then I think we'll take a break shortly. We'll have to then discuss the questions. All three of you can go and get to know Robert. You're right to do that. Oh. So I do need to be hearing talking, because there are questions that you are going to discuss
Yeah.
with your member. Almost finished reading?
Yes, we are.
Okay, so I need to be hearing, discussion implies talking.
I thought we have a general discussion.
No, I would like you to speak amongst each other, just to generally and to get a grasp of it, and then we can share. Regina and Daria, are you discussing the questions? Okay, all right. Right, the Mona crew, they're shy. They're not talking to each other, but they're going to begin now. But you can continue discussing. I'm not yet ready for the whole class, the group discussion. We're still doing peer discussion. So I'll give you 5 minutes. Okay. I was just interested in the dynamics that were going on.
His claim is that there's a direct correlation between one's use of language and the identity. So they are inextricably like the word and the right? So it's almost as if that your language dictates certain things. So yeah, to the extent where even make certain predictions as to what you'll actually make out of life as in your future. Of course it was stated, yeah? In your future.
I don't agree with that.
Of course. I agree.
I think it's not dictated, it's talking about the fact that the language, for example, uses Yewande, and say that it's notion of identity as an individual, it tells who you are, where you're coming from,
Where you're going.
So there's a historical,
And where you're going.
historical identity, or social identity.
And
Historical identity historical institutions would you want.
And we are going.
Okay, now that I've gotten you all to actually speak to each other, let us open it up. Because the time is going and we actually have a lot more to do. Yes, let's open it up. Do we, Regina and Dario? So, were you hearing the discussions? Or the discussion that was occurring between or amongst the 4 students here?
No, we weren't.
Weren't. Okay, so let's just go through the questions. And we go back and forth, right? And just so that your speaker is not on all the time, I want you all to discuss 1 and 2, and then so WJC will discuss 1 and 2, and Mona Campus will discuss 3 and 4. All right? So, no, you all have ideas. You all have credits. You all have ideas. Or you want it the opposite way around. Regina and Dario, did you discuss 3 and 4 already?
Yes, Miss, we've done all of them.
Oh, very good, my good students. There's a competition here. So WJC, you will do 3 and 4, and Mona Campus will do 1 and 2. So let's so you can put on your speaker now, and I'll encourage Mona Campus to speak up. Remember, the speaker is behind you, but it's very sensitive. So yes, 1 and 2, quickly.
What's the main character?
I'm James Baldwin.
James Baldwin. Who is he?
We're a part of the Harlem Renaissance in America.
Right. He's part of the Harlem Renaissance in America. He's become a great writer.
American culture.
Right.
Poet, activist,
And was this mentioned in your target?
No, you see, he's using
Oh,
background knowledge.
So we're
And
getting to
develop your
academic.
Cal. Yes, background
Alright.
knowledge. Wide reading, and that's why you see. Anyway, that's another point. Okay, point 2, and that was an easy. Point 2.
We're having a bit of a disagreement. The whole idea that he projects is that language and identity are intertwined.
I
Right?
don't disagree with that.
Well, we agree on that. He went on to say that yes, so the language that you speak will almost dictate or almost showcase your social background, so the family that you're coming from, your education, educational level, and he even went as far as saying that even it almost dictates your future.
Right, and that's where you disagree.
Yes.
So you are saying, let me hear
I'm in complete
Gavin's point,
solidarity.
and then
It's not me disagree with
Robin.
you. We're on the same page, you know? It's
So
sharing
who
but
is-
disagree.
Okay, so Carla. No.
I think
What was
we
the other
agree
point?
that it dictates
Right, that it dictates your future.
Agree.
Robin, what was your point?
No, I'm saying that I agree, I accept the premise that there is an inextricable link between language and identity, but the notion
Wait,
that...
just wait, I'll stop. Dario? Yes, you have to remember.
I'm
Can
not
you
here.
hear Robin?
Oh, you
Just
have to-
project your voice. No, you don't have to.
Can you stop on the continuous?
I am saying, when you are here now, what's I hear? That I agree with the premise, with Mr. Baldwin's premise, that there's an inextricable link between language and identity. The disagreement comes in where he says that it even indicates the future. And I'm saying, while language is an important variable or thing that we can use to determine or to assess an individual, most times it's an unreliable variable to use, especially in terms of posterity. How I used to speak, I grew up in Tivoli Gardens, used to cuss Badod and speak using the Jamaican Creole. I no longer speak like that. Nobody would have imagined that I would actually
That's
be.
after.
Exactly.
That's after
So-
getting a commando.
No, but that's I'm saying it
Right,
it
so-
We cannot be
So-
it can be.
Yes.
How do you not
I did
learn?
not equipped himself with a language that would allow him to not experience certain
Right.
things.
So what would have happened?
So
What
let
happened
us
to the others?
turn to WJC. Because of time, we're going to move straight to 4 because Robin's point, hindsight, more than hindsight. Question 4, do you think that for Jamaican Creole speakers acquiring standard Jamaican English, and that construction is a little clumsy, that is an expansion of that person's identity? So let me hear from Dario and from Regina. So let's listen up to what they're saying. Yes. Yes, we're skipping straight to number 4 because we're going to piggyback on Robin's own personal story. Okay, no, we don't use, remember, respect for all. Don't use that language. No, we have to be careful. I know you're tired. Remember legal language.
And I think that is why a lot of our students, they refuse to learn standard Jamaican English because they cannot identify with what is being said. They cannot identify. That is not their everyday life. That is not their everyday existence. They come from society. They come from home that speak Jamaican Creole. And so to make the link that, it's taking it to somebody else, they really don't need.
Okay, but wait, hold on. Can I say something? Okay, so I have my own point, but there seems to be a rebuttal from the Mona campus section.
Go ahead,
So,
Instigated by Robin.
No. That doesn't mean that it's not.
Well, I think even in reference to what Robin was saying, you take on a different identity. As he said, when you get educated, when you get competent in the Jamaican standard language, it moves you up. You're able to access education. You're able to, advance in some ways. So as he said, you move from lower class, now you're in the middle class. So things change. You have different job opportunities. Everything else.
So okay. Let me put a spoke in your argument. So if I'm from a rural, I want to use rural community, and I speak Creole. I come from St. Elizabeth. Part of my family is from St. Elizabeth. And they say swims and so on, right?
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, if I learn English, more money will be in my bank account.
No,
I'm being facetious.
That's what I'm saying.
It's
It's not a matter that your identity is being changed, but your identity is expanded. There's a total difference.
Oh, okay.
And that's to say, Dario seemingly is hinting at a change, you become somebody else. But that's not what I'm saying.
It could happen.
Yeah.
But we are defending the point that we're talking about the expansion of the identity, not the change of the identity, which is a totally different thing.
And let me make a point. Sorry, Dario?
Yes, we are saying that not because I learn to speak Jamaican English means I'm expanding my identity as somebody. All we're saying is that we realize that there's a need to be made, and so we play the role in order to get whatever needs to be done.
But
Okay, so you're seeing
who determines?
learning standard language as just an instrumental value. If I learn this, then I can get certain things. But let me put a spoke in your argument, in your wheel, because you said something about identity, that the students don't want to learn English because they think it's a new identity. That means that there's an inextricable link between language and identity, one of the reasons why, I mean, think about males. In Jamaica, speaking standard Jamaican English for males in certain communities is taboo. So once you equip them, and that's part of the struggle for you as English language teachers, how do you allow your students to realize that, hey, you're Creole speaking, that's good. That's how you speak to your granny, your mommy, your brother, your sister, what have you, right? But there's another language, or not but, and there's another language. And you're expanding that. You're not necessarily changing your personality, but you are, and it's how do we as English language teachers get them to realize that we want, because remember our focus is to move them from just simply bigs to calc, you know.
And not alienate them, because that's almost taking away their identity.
So all they do, that's exactly what I'm saying, because it's about transferring, and especially where you have a male teacher speaking standard English. Sometimes it actually helps the male students to speak standard English, because you can actually say to them that, you know, look, for example, you're doing this kind of thing, and also to just make the language experiential, link it to something in their life. They conduct interviews, boys want jobs too, and they need to communicate in a language that all can understand. And if you stick to using the Jamaican Creole, there are so many versions of the Jamaican Creole. One of the reasons why there's the preferred language is so that anywhere you go in the world to speak, once you're people can understand it. So you have to show them these kinds of things.
The other thing too, Dario, is that yes, once you open your mouth as a Jamaican, you kind of can say you're in a foreign country. This happened to me in the States. I'm walking in Target in the States, shopping, and I see this Asian-looking person, and she's with this white-looking boy that looks like her son, part Chinese. She's there talking to her, open her mouth. I say, you come from Jamaica? She say yes. She's not speaking Creole, you know, but her accent dictates that she's Jamaican. But what we're also trying to say is that you have to distinguish between accent, a Jamaican accent, and also the difference between standard Jamaican English and Creole. And they have two, I mean, think about yourself. Think about your own, how you behave when you speak Creole versus how you behave when you speak standard English. It's almost a kind of shifting of your identity, you know.
It's true, because if you're in an argument, you immediately want to switch to Creole.
Depending on it.
Depending.
Well, it depends.
Because when I get very upset with my 3-year-old son, I speak in standard Jamaican. I didn't know that. And then at other times, I might speak in Creole.
It's aggressive.
But there are different types of Creole. There are different types of Creole, you know. We don't think of Louis Bennett's Creole as derogatory.
Exactly.
No. Maybe, no, let me be good. I'm going to be good. Alright, so there's some controversy, and hopefully at the end of the course, Debbie and Regina, we can kind of see the perspective that Perigoy and Boyle are coming with. But this is one of the themes. So the whole issue of Creole and standard English is very key. The final the final point is that now we're going to look at just briefly look at first language acquisition theories. Now there are these overarching theories about how is it that, first of all, before we even reach a second language, how does a baby learn to speak? And there are 3 major overarching theories. The behaviorist theory, and the person associated with that is Skinner. You have a stimulus, you respond, you reinforce. So the idea is that when children hear you speaking, your baby hears you speaking, your niece or nephew or your own child, they're going to imitate what you say. And when you reinforce and say, hey, you know, the baby just a banana. You know, that baby says, oh, great. You know, and now start saying banana, and so on. Then now, briefly, the innatist theory, they kind of refuted what the behaviorists were saying. And the person associated with innate theory is Chomsky, Noam Chomsky. And he said, guess what? Sometimes a baby says, let me say a word for my son. Yes, he says supermarket instead of supermarket. He's never heard me say supermarket, but that's what he says. And so the innate said, it's not simply just the child hears, imitates, you reinforce it, and they learn, but how do you explain these novel utterances?
Because the language is innately human.
Because language is, that's why it's called innate. They're innately human, and there's this device, the universal grammar, somewhere in the brain. I don't think I know exactly where it is, but that says that human beings have this natural capacity to learn a language, right? And that depending on they have this innate capacity. Now, the third and last perspective is interactionist theory. They said, hey, it's not just happening in the mind, you know. It depends on the interaction. What's happening between the caregiver, whether mother, father, or a nanny, or the kindergarten teacher, and that child. Because if you continue to say goo goo gaga, goo goo gaga, the child, right? Right. And if one of the things that they notice is that how mothers talk to children influences how the child eventually learns. In studies done with middle class mothers, what they realize is that the child may be speaking, and the mother will often say the mother asks, how was school today? The child might say, run, I run. And the mother will say, oh, you did a lot of running today. So she expands his vocabulary by putting in those other words, right? And she might ask questions like, so who did you run with today? Did you come first? And therefore scaffolding that interaction, and that's how the child learns language. So those are those three theories.
So we need to be familiar with this.
You need to have a background knowledge of those. Daria and Regina, are you okay? You understanding? Sorry? Yes, okay. So that's it for this presentation. Let's take a 5-minute break. And then we have another presentation, and I'm trying to see how we can make up some time. Alright, because we have a lot to do. Alright, so 5 minutes. You might fall asleep. I'll be back in your 10. There actually is some juice or some water, you know.
That's what we can drink here.
No, I'll bring it.
Yes.